All right, everybody, welcome back. This is the first video of the series Beyond the Introduction that you probably just watched. If not, go back and watch that one. I'll explain the plan moving forward. But I'll go ahead and get right into it. The thing that I'm going to talk about in this video is advanced persuasion and just sort of some basic things to consider that a lot of folks overlook. And I want to talk about first why I approach it this way. So, normally, if you take my 201 course, my public speaking class, I will talk about persuasion and we're going to cover all those same things. But this is advanced public speaking, or at least that's the idea as we see what works and what doesn't. Again, first time the course has been taught at Grand Valley. But when I was reflecting on this and thinking about what makes persuasion effective, for me, it comes down to a feeling. Now, I don't want you to confuse feelings with emotions. That's two different things, and I'll explain that as we get further in these videos. But there's a quote from Maya Angelou, and I'm not one for quotations, but this one stands out to me. It says, "People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you make them feel." And that could be for the better or the worse, of course. And so when I think about persuading people, it's about making them feel, as some folks say, some kind of way. I mean, it's pretty common in the South. You'll hear folks say that. And it's true. You need to make folks feel a certain way of your choosing when they listen to you speak. And there's different ways to do that. Now, the first step, and I've got these divided out into steps, and we'll just make this video about this first step, is to do an audience analysis. There's a lot of different ways that you can do an audience analysis, but let's just first of all think about what it means if you're able to read the room. So when you think about reading the room, what I think of is your ability to quickly assess the situation, the individuals present, and to make a determination if they are a supportive group, a friendly group, a hostile group, maybe an indifferent group, a tired and disinterested group. Any of that information that you can pick up just from sort of feeling the presence in the room. Some people may call it a vibe or dynamics or the mood. That can help you shape your message in the moment. Now, I don't expect you to come up with a whole different strategy because the room felt a certain way. But if everybody in there is really upbeat and happy, you probably want to be that way too. You don't want to try to persuade them and then change the mood from a good one to a bad one. Even if it's on a topic that's a little uncomfortable, try to find a way to keep that mood. Part of the way we're able to read rooms is through the creation of what's called schema. This isn't a theory class, but I want to do this quickly. Schema theory is good and bad. It explains the good and the bad about how we sort of read rooms or situations. Schema theory tells us that when we have a new interaction, a new experience, it creates what's known as a schema or sort of an expectation in our minds of how these same experiences or similar experiences in the future will probably work. And that's a good thing if you think about it. I mean, it's sort of like if you touch the oven when it's hot, your brain is going to say, oh, ovens are hot. Don't touch them. And if you do, check it carefully first. And now your schema is every oven is hot until I verify it's not. That's a really good thing. It's a survival skill. Similarly, we do this with people, and this is where we can get a little wonky. It's a good thing to judge people in some situations, right? I mean, think about it. You've got a windowless van with a person dressed as a scary clown with a big sign that just says free candy, get in. Your schema, because you've watched a horror movie or two, is going to tell you, no, I probably shouldn't go over there. And I even might want to report this person, right? I mean, that's a good thing. It can go wrong, of course, when you wrongly judge other folks because maybe you had a limited knowledge or a limited experience with a member of a group that this person represents, whether that's ethnicity, sex, gender, rank, or status, whatever it might be. You have a sort of feeling about how things might go. That, again, could be good or bad. You may have had, like, let's say that I'm the first professor you've ever worked with and you just love me because I know you do. But then you go to another comm class. Let's say I was your first comm class. and you take another comm class, you would expect the professor to be much like me because I'm the only comm professor that you have had, if that were the truth. And as you have different comm professors, your schema opens up and expands and it becomes complex because you have a lot of different learning that goes in, and that helps you become more accurate with your schema. But again, this can go wrong when people focus too much on demographics, and we're going to get there. So, what are demographics? Well, as you see here, it's just kind of, I hope, what you think, and that's any way that we can describe people in generalizations. So, age groups, ethnicity, sex, gender, education level, group membership, religion, you name it, profession, it's just everywhere, income. Sometimes in studies that we conduct, having as much demographic information as possible is desired because then we can try to find any hidden connections between any of these elements and an outcome that we're measuring of some sort. So demographics can be great, but remember, they can be very broad or very narrow. So it could be as broad as male or female, that's sex, gender is much more complex. All the way down to something narrow, like I've got the example here. What's your Pokemon preference? That's still a demographic for the folks who have a preference. So why do these matter? Again, they can be helpful to sort of give us a framework of what maybe to expect. So if we have a group of college students, we know that they are educated more than just high school. We know that if they're traditional college students, they are of a certain age, 18 to 22 or 4. They are, probably if they're at Grand Valley, we know that Grand Valley is, I think, gosh, I don't know the latest figures, but it's whatever percent, male, female, whatever percent ethnicity breakdown it is. So we can sort of see who we have in front of us, and then we could maybe try to craft a message that would be broadly accepted by many folks in those demographics. But where it gets dangerous, and this is important here, when you oversimplify things and you make these solid expectations of behavior based on just demographics, you've basically created a stereotype, right? So it's all blank people are blank. So all, fat people are lazy. Let's say that. So I'm not super lazy, but yeah, I'm fat. I don't know. I mean, it just is one of those things, You can put in any stereotype that you want there. All bald people are angry because we don't have any hair. I mean, I can be angry, but not really. I'm pretty cool, pretty relaxed, I think. So any blanks that you can fill in here, all the whoever's are this way, that's probably, no, let me rephrase. That is a problem because it shows ignorance, right? There's always this changing that happens. So one big example recently was voting behavior predictions. So for example, in Michigan, on the east side of the state, Detroit metro area almost always goes very Democrat. And people will wonder why. And they'll look at things like the demographics of the voters. And they look at age, they look at ethnicity, and they look at religion. And if you go back and study this past election, the Muslim community there in, Dearborn, right? Those folks typically go Democrat because they feel like Republicans might want to start a war with the Muslim world. Also, the Jewish community, also very large contingent there in the Detroit metro area, typically votes very Democrat because they want more of a, typically it's more of a liberal vote for that community. I mean, that's just the history, of things. And this time around, both groups went the other direction, and it was for the same reason, the handling of the Biden administration's handling of the situation in Gaza. And it wasn't to the liking of the Jewish voters, that's set demographically, and it wasn't to the liking of the Muslim voters, and that's set. And so we saw this shift. And so even to say we've got 20 years of data that says this will be the way they vote, it's just a guess. It's an educated guess, but it risks this oversimplification. So what can you do to be a little more accurate? Well, first of all, if you can ask formal questions, do that. And, assume that people are responding honestly. If you can do like a questionnaire before you get there, that's great. The more knowledge, the better. When you get there, if you can't do it beforehand, you could definitely ask some questions when you start. Remember, we talked about show of hands questions and rhetorical questions as great ways to do attention getters. And so if you want to start your lecture, for example, with some questions to sort of gauge where the audience is on your topic, I think that's a great thing to do. And it can open up nice avenues for you to begin your lecture. Last here, using available information. Again, that's the least accurate way. Again, looking at these demographics. And here's the kicker. Here's why it's so hard to simply use one demographic that describes a person. It's because we are all part of multiple demographic categories. Just myself, right? So I am a male, I am cisgender, I am heterosexual, I am Caucasian, I am between the ages of whatever range includes 42. I am a professor, I have an income of a certain level. Like, all these things describe me in demographic terms, but it's impossible to see how all those all come together. And when they do, when you take them all and mush them in, it's not just a this plus this equals this type of person. It's called intersectionality or intersectional identities. And it's when these things cross up and we don't know if we're trying to appeal to the certain demographic. Is it the male that we're trying to appeal to? That might be one strategy that people use when it's just males in general. What about males in their 40s? That might be probably a different strategy. It's probably going to be on the commercials where it's not feeling like it used to, low T, well, try this. You know, it's a treatment for ED or something, right? These sorts of things are everywhere on TV. So intersectional identities prevent us from using simple demographic information to accurately predict people's behavior. That said, humans are pretty predictable, but it doesn't mean that we can predict them simply because they're members of certain groups. Okay, I'm going to stop there for this video. I will come back with the third video in this series. So we got the introduction, this one, and the next one will be about identity formation and management. And what we'll talk about is the way we become who we are and the way that we can use that knowledge to persuade other people. I'll give you examples of how people do it ethically and unethically. That's next.